Turn to open session.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Albritton?
Aye.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Woolsey?
Yes.
Mr. Ivers?
Yes. Excuse me while I get my ear on.
I'd love to get my machine on.
I need a motion to certify closed session that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting
What is it?
to which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, and considered. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Albritton?
Aye.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Woolsey?
Yes.
Mr. Ivers?
Yes. Honors and recognition. At this time, I'll ask John Staton to come up and preside over the honors and recognition section of our program.
We will begin our honors, awards, and recognitions for this evening. I ask Jennifer Weaver, our Director of Secondary Education, to come forward to introduce the first recognition. Senior of the Month.
Good evening.
Tonight I have the pleasure of recognizing 3 outstanding high school seniors. We're going to start with Auburn High School. Mr. Polly will be here to present, and then Blacksburg High School. Mr. Kitts is here. Christiansburg High School, Dr. Sears, and we'll be recognizing Eastern Montgomery next month with Mr. Knott, and their honoree will be here next month. This time I'd like to welcome Mr. Polly.
Thank you, Ms. Weaver. Members of the board, it is with great pride that I introduce to you Auburn High School's September Senior of the Month, Holly Waterman. Holly consistently does superior work in her classes. Words such as disciplined, dedicated, conscientious, and creative come to mind when thinking of Holly. She is always focused, highly creative, rapidly assimilates and masters material, communicates her understanding in an effective and consistent way, produces high-quality products, and interacts positively with peers and staff. Holly is also highly organized and productive in class, which reflects that she prepares well out of class. Whatever qualities can be used to describe an extraordinary student, Holly demonstrates them all. Holly is accompanied by her parents this evening, James and Kim Waterman. Will you please come forward at this time to be recognized?
Good evening. It is with great pride that I introduce you to Blacksburg High School September Senior of the Month, Mr. Carson Wise. Carson exemplifies what every high schooler should strive to achieve. He is always respectful, hardworking in the classroom and on the field, and an all-around great person. We're proud to have him lead off as the first Blacksburg High School Senior of the Month for this prestigious honor. He is accompanied tonight by his father, Chris, and mom, Barbara, and his little brother, Camden. Would you all please come forward?
You must be very proud. So you got big steps to follow. Congratulations, you must be very proud.
Good evening, members of the board and Ms. Blackburn. It is with great pride that I introduce to you the Christiansburg High School September Senior of the Month, Seth Patrick Wheels. Seth is an outstanding young man who is talented in a variety of areas. He is in the top 12% of his class, has proven to be a valuable member of the CHS Corral program, was honored as an All-State baseball player during his sophomore year, is a force to be reckoned with on the football field, and most importantly, he is a genuinely nice guy. There are no limits to what he can accomplish, and he will undoubtedly be making the Christiansburg community proud for years to come. Seth is accompanied this evening by his father, Paul, his mother, Laura, his brother, Stephen, and his grandparents, Doug and Judy Frazier. Will you please come forward at this time to be recognized?
Jennifer Weaver, please return to the podium to introduce the next award.
This evening, we have the pleasure of recognizing one of our spring sports teams that had a truly outstanding season. You may remember that we finished school before some of our teams were finished. The Blacksburg High School soccer team went on to win the AA state championship in soccer. And so I'd like to ask Coach Blumenthal, and I think some of his players are here, if you all would come on up.
All of a sudden, they're shy. We have several of our members of our team that are off at college pretty far away, as far away as Hamilton, New York. So they're not here with us, but they're certainly here with us in spirit and contributed quite a bit to what we accomplished. This was our program's 12th state championship. And these young men went undefeated on the season. Also on the field, the National Soccer Coaches Association of America ranked this group number 3 in the country last spring. So they really accomplished quite a bit. Their GPA collectively was a 3.36 on the year last year. We'll also qualify them for a national team academic award from that Coaches Association. Probably as important, or maybe more important, that sometimes people don't realize is what this group has accomplished off the field. They were leaders in a program called Project Purple. It was a school-wide campaign from a national program, actually anti-drug and alcohol abuse among their peers. So that was a wonderful thing that they did. Carson, our Student of the Month, was one of the main leaders of getting that going. We also had a program that these young men put together, which was called Play for Polly. It's a memorial scholarship fundraiser for one of our former teachers and the mother of one of our players, Kelby Zeiger, who actually get the opportunity to provide resources for needy youth who want to participate in youth soccer, and they got that going as well. And finally, an annual program that we put together each year. We'll volunteer for the Special Olympics Regional Track and Field Program over at Radford University, and we had a huge turnout. It's a Saturday morning, about 8 in the morning, and the guys were there all day. It was the same day as the prom, and you've never seen a group of young men just interact and do a wonderful job as timers, as escorts, and just doing a lot of cheering. So we have a lot to be proud of these young men, and I'm so fortunate to have worked with them, and we're glad that they have had the opportunity to represent Blacksburg High School and Montgomery County Public Schools. Thank you.
Ms. Weaver will now introduce the next award, Blacksburg High School Wells Fargo Cup Champions.
Gonna ask Coach Blumenthal to stay up here with me. Blacksburg High School also had another honor. They won the coveted Wells Fargo Cup, which is a compilation at the state level of the teams that earn the most points for competing well. And this spring, the soccer team earned the points that put Blacksburg High School over the edge to award the cup. And so I'd like Mr. Kitts asked on behalf of Blacksburg High School if you would accept the honor. I believe that Blacksburg High School has earned, is it 6 awards, and that's more than any other school in 9, which is more than any other school in the state of Virginia. So it's a wonderful honor, and we're very proud of them.
Dr. Kevin Sears, principal at Christiansburg High School, will come forward to introduce the next award. Christiansburg High School Individual AA State Champions.
Good evening again. It's dangerous to give me a microphone without a script, but at this time I would like to introduce our former coach, Shane Gwynn, who will introduce our former student and state champion, Maggie Edelton. I'd also like to note to those in the audience, Shane is our former coach because he's now our athletic director.
Thank you to Ms. Blackburn and the board for allowing us to be here to recognize Maggie tonight. Maggie had the opportunity this past track and field season to accomplish an honor that all track and field athletes covet once they start their spring season, and that's to win a state title. For the past 3 years, she lived under the shadow of Miss Rochelle Evans, who was one of the best throwers in the state of Virginia and is now at William & Mary on a full athletic scholarship. So, you know, Maggie had to wait her turn to have her opportunity to try to win this thing, and when she went to the state championships this past spring, on her very first throw of the competition, she led the competition for her flight, and she led the entire field through 5 throws. And then this one girl decided that she wanted to try to win the state title, so she threw just a little bit farther than Maggie with 1 throw to go. We had to go through the entire last few throwers, and Maggie was the very final thrower of the final competition of the state meet in the discus. And Maggie steps into the circle, and you always wonder what an athlete's going to do at this point. You know the stress is on, you know they want a title, and it's going to go one or two ways. She's either going to pop a big one, or she's going to get nervous and crumble. And she did the first of those two, and she threw a 9-foot PR for her lifetime best, and she won the state title, going away. So for the past 3 years, Christiansburg High School has won the discus state championship with 2 separate throwers. So congratulations to Miss Maggie Addison.
Rick Weaver, Supervisor for Career and Technical Education, will introduce our final award for this evening.
Good evening. It's my honor to introduce to you Mrs. Stephanie Crawford, Technology Education Teacher from Blacksburg Middle, and 2 of her students who are national winners this year, last year actually. Elijah Hodges, who is here with his parents Casey and Clay, and Ju Yong Lee. If you all come forward, please. You've seen Miss Crawford here before. In fact, the last 5 years running, she's stood here because she's had national winners. I think she's due a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I want to applaud her for what she's doing with middle school students. These students compete in Technology Student Association competitions at the state and national level. This year, Elijah won first place in the nation in transportation design, where he applied and documented the engineering design process used in the research, design, construction, testing, and evaluation of a rubber band powered boat. Performance rating of the boat was based on a combination of speed and payload capability measurements. Elijah designed and constructed several designs through the school year from a variety of materials. After creating a computer-aided design of a propulsion system for his boat with Autodesk Inventor, he had his design 3D printed at Virginia Tech to win the state competition. He improved this design and created a balsa wood boat for his final design. This is Elijah. Ju Yong Lee and Elijah together won first place in the nation in problem solving. Together, they applied their problem-solving skills to develop a finite solution to a stated problem given on site. Their problem this year involved a marble maze. Ju Yong? Elijah's parents traveled with him this time and were immensely helpful, I think, in being there and being present when they won these awards. And Elijah also placed second while he was at the national competition. So congratulations to all of these individuals.
We will now take a 10 minutes break so that Ms. Blackburn and the board members can congratulate tonight's awards recipients.
For regular scheduled meetings, the school board sets aside 30 minutes for citizens to address the board about issues pertaining to public education in Montgomery County. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. The screens throughout the room and on the laptop will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining and when 3 minutes has passed. At this point, we have no one signed up to speak. If there's anyone in the audience who cares to address us, please step forward. Public address is closed. Consent items. If there's nothing to be pulled from the consent agenda, then we'll consider the consent items approved. Is there any discussion regarding the consent agenda? Personnel report. Do I have a motion to adopt the personnel report? So moved. Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Excuse me, is there any?
Was it
I don't see one.
Pardon?
We have a
personnel report?
There's an attachment.
Not on mine.
Not on mine either.
Mine either.
Are you logged in?
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been having
1 minute.
problems all night.
Yeah, we have been having problems on this end all night. We don't usually have these technical challenges.
Yeah.
All set?
Nope.
Nothing's been changed, has it?
Okay. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Payment of the bills. We have a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Any discussion about the bills? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Financial summary report. Do I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the financial summary report?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Superintendent's reports, recommendations, and announcements. Ms. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Ivers. Your first item this evening is Governor's Opportunity Educational Institution. It's an opportunity for the School Board of Montgomery County to consider approving a resolution which has been adopted by many other school boards within the state of Commonwealth of Virginia, and it was initiated by the Norfolk City School Board and the Virginia School Board Association. It is basically a lawsuit requesting that the Governor's Opportunity Educational Institution be declared as unconstitutional. For the audience who may not be familiar with OEI, OEI is a legislation that would allow the state to assume the operation of schools that are considered failing. And schools are defined as failing if they have been accredited warned for 3 or more years. The lawsuit specifically states reasons that the OEI is unconstitutional. Those points are contained within the resolution, which is attached to your agenda this evening. It's my recommendation that the board consider approval of this resolution.
Motion to approve.
I second it.
Any discussion?
Yes, this is very, very timely. In fact, it should have been enacted the moment that they passed this legislation. What this is doing is just another piece to take over public education and turn it into a private domain, which will render the gap between those who have and those who have not in this country. It will just broaden it. You know, what the state of Virginia is trying to do and what's being done across the country to public education is a disgrace. So we need to be fighting tooth and nail to protect public education any way we can.
Also, this legislation violates the Constitution of Virginia in that it usurps the role of local school boards in supervising and managing the public schools in our Commonwealth. It's incredible.
I hope our community will take note of what our local House delegates, how they voted on this when
Yes.
they go to the polls in November.
I'm with you. I
Yes,
agree.
because their tax dollars would be used to support private schools, because this is what it would come down to. State would take them over, private entities would run them, and your tax dollars would go to pay for that. And there would be, the level of accountability is nothing compared to the accountability level that public education is held to. So it is absolutely ridiculous. And if we stand for this, we may as well stand for anything, because that's what it'll end up being.
Public money is for public schools, and let's understand that, even though Virginia is going in a very difficult, bad direction, allowing tax credits to corporations and individuals that give to foundations who contribute scholarships to kids going to private schools. It's incredible. But this is definitely a yes vote.
Any more discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Thank you. I will pursue the resolution tomorrow. Next item is the enrollment update. As you may know, today is the 10th day of the 2013-2014 school year, and that is the point at which we usually take an official look at enrollment data. Dr. Graham and Ms. Weaver will provide you with information on current enrollment for this school year.
Good evening. As Ms. Blackburn said, each year at this time we bring you the 10-day enrollment. If you look at the first page of this slide, on the left-hand side, you'll see that this year in K through 5.
Oh, hold on just one second.
The next two items are flipped with
Right.
attachment.
Okay,
Yeah.
they're
The
flipped.
attachments are flipped.
Okay,
Right.
Oh.
gotcha. We've got the state accreditation presentation, so we need to look at state accreditation to get your copy
Right.
of this
Ten.
report
they're
then.
flipped.
Okay.
Okay, I found it.
You found it? Okay, good. I'm finding it too. Okay.
I
We're
can't
good.
find it. Where is it?
Here, go down to the next agenda item.
Down here?
Go to.
Oh,
We're good. So now we
oh,
go.
okay, okay.
That's what happens when it's the 10th day and enrollment comes in at the 10th minute. But
Very good.
if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see that this year, K through 5, we have 4,435 students enrolled. And last year, at day 10, we had 4,355 students in the elementary schools, with a difference of 80. When we look at the overall enrollment, which is down at the very bottom, this year it's 4,435 for elementary, secondary is 5,085. That's 9,520 students as of today. Our budget projection was 9,552, so we're just 32 students different. If you go to the next page, what I've done is taken each school and given you a picture of what it looks like by grade level. So if you look at Bellevue, for PK, we use the number of 18 because we always know that we will fill our preschool classes with 18 students. So they may not be filled just yet, but we use that as a holding number. Then kindergarten, we have 51 students, 3 teachers with a PTR of 17. So I'll leave those for you to read individually. The next slide gives you the Blacksburg strand. And then the last slide gives you Auburn Elementary and Eastern Montgomery. And with that, I'll turn it over to secondary.
So for our secondary numbers, you can see that we've got a total of 5,085 students today. Last year, we had 5,062 students. And I did want to point out on this chart, it's a little bit different because with our new student data management system with PowerSchool, we're currently tracking independent secondary in Rivendell, numbers by those schools, and last year they were incorporated into their homeschool. So that's why there's a difference there. You see last year it's a 0. It's not that we didn't have students, they were just accounted for at their homeschool. And then you can see our total enrollment for middle school and our total enrollment for high school last year compared to this year. And then you can see our PTRs for last year and this year, and also the number of teachers for last year and this year. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I just want to thank you for putting in the number of students at Rivendell and Independent Secondary, et cetera. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, since we just got the data, we needed just a couple minutes to look at this.
We apologize. It was the 10th day, and so
Right.
by the time we got it all, it was late afternoon.
And pupil-teacher ratio has gone up a little bit, but not hugely.
A little bit.
Just
From
a little bit.
21.54 to 22.37 in the high
Yes,
school. Yet our teachers have gone down.
Is that mostly attributed to middle school changes?
Correct.
okay. But at the elementary level, especially if you look at Bellevue, the 5th grade class, 23. Christiansburg Elementary, 4th grade, 23. And I just won't, notice the 21s and the 20s. It is creeping up. We might look at averages, but look at the size of these classes. Margaret Beaks, Price's Fork, some 23s, 21s. So, in the Auburn Strand, we've got some 20s, 21s. So when we go into budgeting, I hope we're not going to be looking at increasing that teacher-pupil ratio anymore, because I really don't like the numbers that I'm seeing.
Are those classes that Ms. Franklin just mentioned, do they have aides in those classes by any chance?
No, they do not.
Do they?
Except in some cases, there might be a special education student, but they don't have an aide based on the PTR. With our budget, as Ms. Franklin said, that's where we're at this time. So
Yeah.
hopefully that won't continue to creep up.
Right.
Not unless
By
we
the
let
same
it.
token, it's one thing that does happen to you is that kids don't come in nice, neat little packages. And so although you may have a school that has an average of 23, you'll also have a school that has an average of, for example, let's look at Auburn Elementary School. You'll see that at Auburn Elementary School in 4th grade, their average is 17.6.
And that's great.
So we just don't get the nice, neat little packages. Otherwise, we could make them all have 18.14 kids in them, and it would be perfect. But it's not a perfect world.
Right, I'm not looking at a perfect world, and I understand some classes are, smaller than, what we have set for what we want to see. But those children who are sitting in the classrooms that have 20 and more students, those are the ones I'm looking at. What's going on in those classrooms? And when we have the employees, the teachers, that we can split those classes so that we do have smaller classes, that's what I'm looking at. So if you don't have enough teachers to make the classrooms smaller, then you get gigantic classrooms.
The other thing that I think is a consideration with class size in Montgomery County is that none of our special education teachers show in the class size. So frequently, although I'm all for, I'm happy to have the lowest class size we can possibly have. Frequently, when I visit in classrooms, I find that there are at least 3 adults in many of the classes that I visit. In addition to that, for example, I was at, I believe it was Harding this week, and they had 10 intern teachers who were there in addition to our regular employees. So although this is your basic teacher-to-student PTR, it doesn't reflect all of the instructional resources that you have in a class. I would certainly love to see us be able to get to the board PTR goal, which is, you know,
So is it possible for us to see all the extra bodies that are in classrooms or available to be in classrooms?
yes, we could tell you how many additional instructional personnel are assigned to each school. The person moves lots of times. For example, if it's a instructional assistant or if it is a actual special education teacher that moves with a group of kids, then she might be in Miss Jones' class with 3 students for part of the period, and then she and those 3 kids go somewhere else for part of the period. But we could tell you how many special education teachers are assigned to a school, if that would be helpful. Because this does not truly reflect how many adult hands you have in most of our classrooms.
Okay. And I understand adult hands, but the, I don't know what word to use, but they're not actually teachers.
Yes, they are actually teachers. Chris Gilly, could you tell us how many special education teachers we employ in the elementary school? Just for a ballpark number, because every one of them is teaching kids in classes with our regular teachers.
Right. There are well over 40 in elementary schools, and many of them have elementary education endorsements as well as an endorsement in special education.
Okay, so I understand special ed teachers. Those are teachers, but we have aides that are in the classroom. Are you counting those as bodies in the classroom?
When I walk in, I would count them as another pair of hands that I see in the classroom, but I'm not reflecting to you that they are teachers.
Okay.
But if you added 40 teachers to the elementary school and did your PTR that way, it would certainly reflect a very, very different number, although I know the special education teachers' primary focus is kids who are identified special ed. But they also do a great deal of co-teaching, and it's one of the things that we, advocate in that a special education teacher in a classroom with a basic education teacher is teaching that group of students the same as the regular classroom teacher is. She can teach a special ed kid, and she can teach a non-special ed kid.
Just one other comment. General Ed has been great at providing in-service and workshop instruction for special education teachers as well as general education teachers in many of the materials that are used. For example, you may go into an elementary classroom and they'll be running LLI reading groups, and there will be a special education teacher teaching a group of students from that whole class, as well as the general ed teacher and sometimes the Title I teacher. And student teachers, yes.
So again, I'm not trying to take away from the PTR because I would love to see it be the board's goal, but I do think it's important to note that it's not just basic education teachers that are routinely working in our classrooms and teaching students, in addition to the instructional assistants. And I don't know off the top of my head how many special education instructional assistants there are, but that would be another number to know.
That's well over, it's probably 80.
Okay, and that's great, but.
But
when-
they're not teachers, no.
When our PTR was lower, we still had those resources too.
Well, let's get the state to give us more money. Yep.
Any other comments? I think we need to keep an eye on the budget starting today, because these numbers can't creep up. They really can't, and they have been creeping up. And it's all about budget. So we need to start focusing on that as a board right away.
Thank you.
Thank you. So your next item is your your state accreditation and federal accountability agenda item, and you will find the attachment on the enrollment update. But it is there, and again, we apologize. It was added late this afternoon as well. We did give you some preliminary information in draft, but the data was only just officially released today. The state had planned to release at least federal accountability last Thursday, and they delayed the release to today. And so what you see is the most current information available. And I'm going to ask Carol Jennings if she would come forward. She's going to do our presentation this evening. Thank you, Carol.
Good evening. I'll lower that just a little bit. Okay. Tonight I'm going to give you an update on state accreditation and federal accountability. Federal accountability, as Ms. Blackburn said, was just released by the state today, and you received much of the information that's in the presentation in a confidential memo on September 5th. First, we're going to talk about state accreditation. And state accreditation will be released to the public this Friday, September the 20th. However, in talking with my peers around the state and with Virginia Department of Education staff, I expect to see many more schools throughout the state that are not fully accredited. And just for your a refresher, these are the benchmarks that our schools have to meet for state accreditation.
And that's for how many years? Just this year, or?
Pardon?
How many years is this benchmark number, the numbers? Is it for this year?
It's for this year. Yes, ma'am. It's the
Thank
test taken in 12-13, and then state accreditation is based in 13-14 based on last year's testing numbers. Based on preliminary data, we expect all Montgomery County schools to be accredited again this year. 16 schools will be fully accredited, and 3 schools will be accredited with warning. 2 schools will be in year 2, and 1 school will be in year 1. Last year, Montgomery County had 2 schools accredited with warning, and this year we have 3. Last year, approximately 5% of the schools in the Commonwealth were accredited with warning. And this year, I'm expecting that we will see an increase statewide from last year's 5% to 21% or greater. Montgomery County outperformed the state in state accreditation. Even though we have 3 high schools that we anticipate will be accredited with warning, each of the high schools made significant gains in mathematics and are getting much closer to the 70% benchmark. Now let's move to federal accountability. Last year, the state submitted the flexibility waiver to the United States Education Department. As a result, the terminology changed, and we now speak about federal accountability instead of No Child Left Behind and AYP. In the data released by the state today, we see that 41% of the schools in the Commonwealth met federal accountability. The reverse of that is that 59% of the schools in the Commonwealth did not meet federal accountability benchmarks. As you will see later in the presentation, 50% of Montgomery County schools met the federal accountability benchmarks, and 50% of our schools did not meet federal accountability. Here you see the subgroups for federal accountability. We have 9, and they're listed for you on the screen. As you can see, that although each subgroup has a different starting point for math, they all end up with the same benchmark by 2016-17. For mathematics, that is 73%. The only subgroup that is different is the Asian subgroup, and this subgroup started out with a higher benchmark in the first year than the ending benchmark for all the other subgroups.
Question.
Okay.
GAP Group 1, it says, I read that it was disadvantaged LEP in students with disabilities.
Yes, ma'am.
And then down at 45-ish, it's disadvantaged.
Okay.
And also African American is, oh, that's a subgroup, that's 2.
That's
And then
GAP Group
Hispanic
2.
is 3. Why didn't they say African American and Hispanic? So those are my questions. Do we know?
I don't know why they changed the name, but that was a state decision. And we still look at students with a disability separately. We still look at disadvantaged students separately. And we still look at English language learners separately, the LEP students. But they, the state has made what we call a supergroup, and they have combined those 3 subgroups into one. Now, if Carol Jennings was a student with a disability and disadvantaged and LEP, I'm only going to be counted in GAP Group 1 one time.
But you would also be counted in the students with disabilities group, so
Yes.
you would be counted twice.
So I would be counted in each of those other 3 subgroups below.
And when
Very
you say,
confusing.
when
Yes,
you
it
say
is.
disadvantaged, Carol, would you define
Okay.
disadvantaged?
Disadvantaged, and that is defined as students with low economic status, socioeconomic status, and that is defined as students who are on free and reduced lunch.
Thank you.
Still doesn't make
Okay.
sense.
And then again, for English, you see again that each subgroup has a different starting point, but they all end up with the same benchmark in 2016-17. And for English, that is 78%. And again, you see the Asian subgroup, the benchmark is higher, and again, that's because they started out with a higher starting point than all the other subgroups at the end. This information that I'm about to present on the next couple slides is brand new, and we believe will be receiving much press throughout the state. Federal accountability has a clause in it that is reported as MHE, and that stands for failed to meet higher expectations. So if you go to the DOE website and you look at the report cards and you see any subgroup that has a MHE out beside of it, that means that they failed to meet higher expectations. Simply put, the backsliding provision means that a school must meet or be within 5% of the previous year's pass rate for each subgroup in order to meet federal accountability guidelines, even if the score exceeds the established benchmark. The backsliding rule supersedes everything else. Montgomery County has 3 high-performing schools that were impacted by the backsliding rule. They all met the annual benchmark pass rates, but experienced slight declines in the performance of one or more subgroups. Federal accountability also has a 90% provision. This means that once a school has a 90% pass rate in a subgroup, that subgroup must stay at 90% or above. In 2012-2013, the division and 6 schools had pass rates of 90% or more in English for some subgroups, and 4 schools had pass rates of 90% or more in mathematics. That means in 2013-14, the division and those schools must maintain at least a 90% pass rate in those subgroups in order to meet federal accountability guidelines. In Montgomery County, 7 elementary schools have met federal accountability status. And we have 3 elementary schools that were impacted by the backsliding rule. They will be designated on the state report card with MHE, and you'll remember that that means failed to meet higher expectations. In the state, if you looked at the release today, there were 534 schools statewide that failed to meet the higher expectations.
So those are higher expectations in the subgroups.
Yes, ma'am, and that's based on last year's 2011-2012 pass rates, and then the test taken this year or this past year in 12-13. If the pass rate fell 5% below that, the state considers that failed to meet higher expectations. Excuse me, even if the school met or exceeded the benchmark. And all 3 of our elementary schools in this category met the benchmark, met the AMO.
When I was looking at the chart on the website, it didn't tell you the subgroup that didn't meet it. Is there a
For
chart
those
that-
3 schools?
Yeah. Is there another level that tells you those details?
I have that. I think it's in the data that Ms. Blackburn sent you on September the 5th.
But the public could see that on their website, I guess, by going down levels, I assume. Yeah, it's,
In the chart that you have, it's still confidential because there are numbers that are fewer than 10,
Okay.
so that has not been put on our website yet.
The numbers that are fewer than 10 don't show. They don't get
They don't get
an
reported.
accountability score if they have less than 10 students. But you got the raw data.
Yes. Okay. Okay, and moving to secondary, we have 2 secondary schools that met federal accountability guidelines. And we have 6 secondary schools that did not meet federal accountability status. The 2 areas that challenged us were math and graduation rate for the class of 2012, not 2013. For federal accountability, graduation lags a year. All 4 high schools, however, made significant gains in the federal graduation rate, with Christiansburg High School leading those increases. Some of their increases were as high as 20% to 28% for the different subgroups.
Oh, that's good.
And that was just the graduation rate.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Now, let's look at the progress we've made and the successes that we've experienced. All elementary schools met the federal accountability AMOs, the benchmarks. The division and all schools met federal accountability AMOs in English, even with the more rigorous standards and assessments that were administered for the first time in the 2012-2013 school year. Many of the schools in Montgomery County made gains in their mathematics pass rates. However, the high schools had the most significant gains, with some increases as high as 20 percentage points. In 2013, all 4 high schools met the Graduation Completion Index benchmark of 85 points for state accreditation. The Graduation Completion Index uses the most current graduation cohort data.
Is it 2014?
2013. The federal accountability goes back a year to 2012, and then state accreditation is the most current year, 2013. Okay. This year, we are expanding Read 180 and are implementing Math 180. We believe this will help our students with the greatest needs in reading and mathematics. We have expanded the coaching model, especially in mathematics at the high school level. We have done this by increasing the number of coaches and by providing more extended coaching at the high school level. Ms. Blackburn hopes to expand the coaching model further. And we have a curriculum that is aligned with the new, more rigorous standards in mathematics, English, and science, which is accompanied by new textbooks and other instructional materials. So what are we going to do moving forward? Montgomery County Schools will continue to provide the schools with the best resources that we have available to support each student so they can reach their full potential. We must recognize that we are challenged with more rigorous standards and more rigorous assessments. We are going to continue to move forward and do what's best for each and every student. We are going to work to be sure students are actively engaged in learning each and every day.
I'm sure Carol would be happy to answer questions that you may have. You have a lot of data. It's a whole new playing field. It's not the playing field that we were accustomed to. We watched very closely today to see what the press release from the Virginia Department of Education would be, and actually it gave us very little information about trend lines, et cetera, across the state, except that it did appear to give us a picture that although we are not satisfied with where we are, Montgomery County did outperform the results in the state for the most part. And compliments are certainly due to our high schools for the great work they did to try to move those math scores forward. And some of them had a long, long way to go, and we still have a long way to go. But the interventions that the board supported last year and that you have allowed us to put resources into again for 13-14 are making a difference with what happens in those schools. And Carol's, she's our data guru, and I gave you a whole bunch of raw data, and if you have any issue with opening it or accessing any of it, I'm happy to send it to you as a separate link and let you take a close look at it and let us know what your questions may be when you do that as well.
With the information you have now, plus the September 5th confidential memo, I think it probably would, I'm going to go and review that as I look at this, and it'll help clear things up.
I have a question. It may be too general, and you can say it's too hard to answer, but what would you say are the most difficult challenges in our district meeting these demands?
I think with the students who are moving up into the high school level with mathematics. Also, we now are moving into our 3rd year with the new mathematics standards. And so that means that every school in the district, not just high schools now, must look at their mathematics pass rates. And many schools must meet the 70% benchmark in order to be accredited the next school year, because they no longer have that 2 previous years of good scores to fall back on. That is probably the most challenging that I can think of.
And this is a way out question, I would just say, I have no idea, but is there any correlation between a student's ability to read and math test scores by any chance? That may be too out. Too far out.
We can find you some research on that.
Yeah.
The greatest correlate of student achievement is being economically disadvantaged.
Mhm.
Poverty is
Right.
the biggest indicator. And, 2 things to add to what Carol said, I would say that our two other big challenges are the engagement piece, which we're focusing on. If you think about Jonathan's presentation,
Mhm.
You can pour all you want to, but unless you got a connection and the knowledge, the information's going somewhere, you're not going to make a difference.
Amen.
And I think the other one is that it would be really nice if somebody would just pick a system and stick with it. We had the ability to take a look at trajectory to see if we were moving forward. But now everything, the baseline, it's all started over, and all the standards are new. So although you may be continuing to make gains, you're showing them against a different measuring stick. So it's very hard to look at improvement over time when you have a changing measuring stick.
Yeah.
I don't care what measuring stick you use, just give me the one that you want and let us, work against it. Then you can see if you're making progress. Like with the English test this year, they didn't even set the benchmark until what, March?
The benchmark was set actually in the summer,
Yeah, okay.
the summer months.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, you don't even know what you're working against sometimes, so.
Well, and I have
Yeah,
to
thank
say
you.
it, I agree, the presentation that Jonathan had last meeting, I thought was on mark, because my house, my kids constantly compare who had the highest math level time they went into high school. But both of my sons, by the time they graduated, had become less interested in as juniors and seniors and didn't push it like they did, starting in high school. So he hit the nail on the head with what I consider just the average student clicking along. I agree 100%. 100%.
And I do understand what you said, Ms. Blackburn, about economically disadvantaged. I appreciate everything we are attempting to do, starting with our youngest children. And the more pre-Ks we can get going in the school system, the better.
Ms. Franklin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. Okay. I do appreciate all the hard work that is going on and how we're trying to, with one test, see that our schools and teachers are, doing what we want them to do, which is ridiculous.
Horrible.
But it concerns me when we look at, they change from the subgroups to the gap groups. Bottom line is, the one thing that I've always said I like about this is that it pulls these groups of children out so we can see exactly what's going on. And consistently, the gaps are still there. And we've had some decline. And that really concerns me, especially when we have such small numbers of students in this county. That has always been a puzzle for me. You have 2 kids, what's going on, okay? So let's not forget, just because they're renamed, we still have the same issue. And it was there before we had the standardized test, and it's here now, and I'm really hoping that this relationship piece is going to help, close that, because that's one of the things that is missing. The relationships that our students have, the understandings that our teachers and principals have with our minority students and our disadvantaged students. So you know, it's just, this is for me, one of the most frustrating times of the year to listen to these numbers and see that these groups of kids are still not where they need to be. I'm not talking about where we want them to be, where they need to be. And that is achieving at the same rate as all students when we look at that group all put together.
And I'll put in my 5 cents. I am looking for the day when Virginia has mandatory pre-K for all families receiving Medicaid, welfare to work, or a parent in prison. I think that would really solve a lot.
Ms. Blackburn?
Thank you, Carol. We appreciate it. It was a lot of information to digest and try to put it into some meaningful talking points. Nice job. Our next item this evening is our monthly facilities update. Mr. Baronato.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Our roof projects are complete as of this week at the Technology Building in Christiansburg High School. And the auditorium seats at Christiansburg High School are set to begin this week and finish by the end of the month. Also, just very recently, we've started on a project not listed here, but it's for CHS. It's relocating a mobile unit that we own and is at Old Christiansburg Middle School. And that will provide some relief to the building interior so we could support better dedicated remediation room inside the building. And we're hoping to begin in the next couple of weeks after permits are applied for and received. We'd get a new other project, and that was from the town of Christiansburg Parks and Rec. And we're working with them at Old Christiansburg Middle School field, the Old Christiansburg High School football stadium field, and they're putting up some goalposts. The only permanent part of that, which could be removed even, is a sleeve in the ground, and there'll be dual goals, football and soccer.
That is so nice to hear, because one of the biggest things that I heard from the folks in Christiansburg when we had to move the children from Blacksburg was seeing that field taken over.
Right.
So just glad that's going to be back.
And then we'll be working this fall to basically remediate, put soil and grass over the areas where all the mobile units were at the end, even extend that field further. No substantial updates on the former school properties. I think the Price's Fork Elementary negotiations continue, and you can see there, basically this is the same from last month.
What do you mean by that? That the negotiations continue with?
They have an interested party in the Price's Fork Elementary School, and the county is in negotiations with a potential party.
Thank you.
And the larger projects we've been tracking, we continue the door hardware security improvements. We're approximately 50% complete on the exterior doors in the schools, and we'll be working on that throughout the fall. As you know, we did receive a grant in the amount of $60,565 from the state to go towards increased front door improvements at CES, CHS, CPS, and Harding Avenue. And then the one at the bottom, replace auditorium seats. Again, that one will hopefully be completed by the end of this month. That's it. Any questions?
When I look at the estimated cost of the running total, items 6, 7, and 8 are pretty concerning. Are we going to run into budget issues with those? Well, they're priority 3, 4, and 5. It's line 6, 7, and 8.
And what is the question? I apologize.
They're way over the estimate. All three of those are way over the estimate. So are we going to run into any budget issues with those?
No, that last column is a running total to show you that we're going towards the
Okay.
375,000. We have most of these bid prices. You never know to the end of the project with change orders, but I can update that next time.
But if they're complete, we should have the actual and not estimate.
Right, I haven't, yes, I'll get that for next time.
And we did hold a little reserve, like $25,000 unencumbered of the
Right.
$400,000 in case we ran into an overrun project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. While I have you there, I would like to say that, I had an opportunity to visit almost all of our schools in the first few days of the school year, and our school campuses and our school buildings looked amazing, and for our facilities, maintenance and facilities departments, along with our custodial crews in all the schools, to accomplish that, especially with some of the big other projects that we had going on. I would say kudos to you and your entire group. Great job. They looked wonderful.
Thank you. They really worked hard and did a good job. Thank you. I'll pass that on.
Thank you. And finally, Tim, are you up at bat tonight? Okay. So we've got Tim with us tonight, and he's going to do a little update for us on our capital projects. And I'm sure he's going to share a little bit about the fact that we have actually pretty much sewed up 2 of those big capital projects.
Yes,
And
ma'am. Well, good evening.
welcome,
and
Tim. Hello.
Thank you. As you see, the Auburn High School, they did get moved in on time. We are completing punch list and commissioning items right now. The punch list is down to very minimal items, and commissioning will be done in a couple weeks. Blacksburg High School received a certification, Oxio, this month, and then they are also as well in the completing the punch list and commissioning operations there. Here's a couple photos. This is Auburn High School, and you see the buses all lined up. Thought this would be a good picture to say, hey, we did it. These kids are in school. They're riding the buses now. Then the picture on the right shows some of the remaining owner-furnished equipment that is moving in the building. There's a few items left on owner-furnished side that were late coming in. They should be taken care of within the next couple of weeks. Blacksburg High School, we have a picture of the main entrance there. And then the library there on the right with students actually sitting in it. Auburn Middle School doesn't look the same as it did a month ago, for sure. The picture on the left there you'll see is the last bit of the boiler room is gone. On the right you can see that there's a picture of where we've taken out windows and infield. Here you can see the old, this is the old gym. It used to be the gym a long, long time ago. It's all opened up now. All the admin area that was in there is gone. They're filling in openings and getting this ready to start putting things back together. And then you can see the cupola. If you've been by, it doesn't look the same anymore. This was actually when they were abating the paint from it. Now it's been primed. It's all white. The fascia around where the gutter goes has been primed. I think the gutter was ordered today. But anyway, a couple of comments on the high school, the middle school, the abatement activities. They're doing the last part that we know of this week, and that'll be taken care of. We started pouring concrete last week for the new building on Friday and poured some more today. So that project does not look nothing like it did. So it is proceeding very well. Any questions?
Just a huge thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim, and
I
thank you
just have
for
two
your
com-
leadership with the opening of Auburn High School as well.
Yeah.
2 comments. The old Auburn High School was just a great, great school to go and visit, because you could go in there, and that office was just that dark wood that had been worn for, 50, 60 years, 70 years, 60 years. It was just wonderful to go in there and see all that. And I hate to see it go, but we've got to move on. Secondly, the teachers at Blacksburg High School are so thankful that they have light in their rooms. The old high school was the darkest, dingiest school, and it smelled. You could go certain areas in that school, and you'd just think, what is that smell? Couldn't figure it out. It was something similar to the old Junkin School, where I went in the back room one time, and I don't know, Dan, you were with me, and I smelled some bad stuff. And these old schools, when they wear out, they just smell. And they get so dark, and this new school is gorgeous. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Ms. Blackburn? I see the backside of this new Auburn Middle School twice a week now, from the baseball field perspective. But, you know, I'm sitting there wondering how the students are doing getting bused back and forth and things. Is that going okay? Are you getting much feedback from that?
We have a shuttle bus there. We've gotten, I've not gotten a single call from a single parent. So
That's good.
if there are issues, then Guyleen and her staff and Carl and his staff are handling them. I do know there have been a few little snafus as far as making sure there's somebody at the high school to meet the students and make sure they get in the right spot at the right time. But we're continuing to try to fine tune it. And Guyleen, I know, has been riding the bus, as have others from her school, and we're trying to look at some additional ways that we can support that.
But just in that 2 weeks, I've noticed a huge change, just in 2 weeks, so it's moving
But they're
along.
going across, I think it's about 4 periods a day that we're taking some people. The size of the group varies from period to period.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blackburn. I think that's it, isn't it?
Well, that's all for me. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mr. Ivers, and let you wrap us up.
Well, thank you very much.
Unfinished,
Any
unfinished,
unfinished,
and all
any
that.
unfinished business? New business? Announcements or information?
I just have one kudos kind of thing. I know all of our principals and all of our schools go above and beyond the call of duty every day. But I've had a lot of people this week talk about the fact that Dr. Sears, which I think he's already gone at Christiansburg High School, came to the band camp that the Christiansburg High School, when they went, they looked up and he was there. And I have had so many people say, I couldn't believe it, that I turned around and there he stood, so kudos to him. Everybody at that high school is just tickled to death with him, and I'm sure all the other schools are tickled with their principals too, but with him kind of being a newbie, so anyway.
Again, I want to thank the administration for what a great opening we had this year, and you all received your apples. Thank you very much. You did a beautiful job. Great job. Any other announcements?
Yeah, I would again like to thank all who made the school openings on time possible, and all the hours the teachers put in. They weren't being paid. They got their, I just love telling the rest of the country and the world about our school system and how committed people are. I'm just really, really very grateful for all the commitment on the part of everybody who made it happen on time this year. Also, along with Joe, what I'm hearing, we have windows at Blacksburg High School. We have windows. Everybody that I ask out the new school, we have windows. And for those people who think we should not have built a new school, I'm hoping to get a chance to look at the new school and really appreciate what we have. I would also like to make a comment about the soccer team. Back in 1978, 79, we lived in Austria, where my kids had the experience of playing soccer. We came back to Blacksburg, Montgomery County, and we had no soccer 30 years ago. And today, thanks to a gentleman named Dan Orr, who was passed away this year, but they were very active in PTA at Blacksburg High School, and he started in a soccer program on the side, and then eventually it grew into the school system. And I can't wait to call his wife and explain what happened tonight. And I'm just really thrilled that we evolved into such an awesome soccer environment when we had nothing 30 years ago.
Well, I would just like us all to reflect back about 3 years ago when we were going through the process of trying to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, and the endless meetings, which was for me, it was a wonderful learning curve, the new process, the PPE process. I sit back and I keep thinking, we're in these buildings now. You know, we're in them. Where if we had gone in another direction, we wouldn't be there right now. And I just want to thank all the board members and administration who were involved, the supervisors, with pushing through with that, because it was trying because it was new. But I think it has worked wonderfully for this district. And I haven't been able to go into the schools yet because I have asthma and I can't deal with the paint and the dust and stuff yet. So I can't wait to get into them and to be able to see them. So it was just wonderful to see the picture with the students actually sitting in the building. It's kind of surreal. I even get a little choked up because, wow, that was, this has come a long way. And I'm just so happy and just thrilled that the children are back in Blacksburg, the children in Auburn are in their new building. It's probably one of the happiest moments I've had since I've been on this board. So thanks to everybody.
Any other comments? Agenda preparation. You can see that we have an October 1st board meeting and October 15th. Just for a note, I will not be at the October 1st meeting, but I think you'll still be in good hands. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.